Turn-based RPGs are not dead. Final Fantasy, take notes. This game is actually going to go back. If you're the kind of person who enjoyed the JRPGs of yore, then you should definitely be checking out this game because it's taking a lot of inspiration from those games. Specifically, the Final Fantasy franchise, if you're familiar with that, you're going to see a lot of familiarities of things that they've done in the past. So, as I said, this game is turn-based, which is something we don't often see outside JRPGs anymore. Maybe the Persona series or Shin Megami Tensei, but that's about it. But yeah, so you're gonna be running around in the overworld. You're gonna, it's gonna freeze up. Or you're gonna hit an enemy. It's gonna switch you. It's gonna take you away from that overworld. And it's gonna throw you into a battle screen like it used to do. But of course, old things. Sometimes it's nice to get a little bit of a fresh coat of a paint. So what this is going to be doing is it's going to be adding some real-time mechanics to the game as well. So if you've played, Final Fantasy VIII back in the day, you might remember that when you attacked with Squall, you could, hit the trigger or whatever, and that would do extra damage with the gunblade if you timed it right. Well, now they're taking that to the extreme. So, when you do certain attacks, you can, hit the trigger correctly and get some extra crits, some extra damage out of there. When an enemy attacks you, you can jump, or you can dodge, or you can parry. Parrying is going to be a little bit harder than dodging, so dodge is going to give you a larger window, but if nothing's going to happen if you dodge. Whereas a parry is going to have a slightly smaller window, but if you do pull off a parry and you're going to get some of your energy back, so you can use those on your special attacks. But also, if enemies might attack multiple times, if you can parry every single one of the attacks in their combo, you're going to get a counter on them. So, there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be really kind of an engaging combat system, even though it's still turn-based. And speaking of turn-based, it's going to be turn-based in the sense of Final Fantasy X. So if you've played Final Fantasy X, you know that the way it would work is it had a list of all the characters on the side of the screen, and it would tell you, like, okay, this person is up right now, this person is next, this person is next, then it's this person, then this person. And so you can see what order everyone's going to go in, you can see when your next turn's coming up and all that. It's going to be doing that, so you can take it at your own pace in a sense. When it's when you're defending, you're going to need to be able to be on top of things. But when it's your turn, you can kind of take a sit back, take a breath, think through your attacks, think about what you're gonna do, think a little more strategically. So this is going to be a lot less of a kind of an impulse and twitch speed kind of thing, and going back to kind of the tactical thinking of turn-based. So that's really, really cool if you're a fan of those older games. This whole thing with a fresh coat of paint. So each character, though, is going to be playing slightly differently. Everyone's going to have a melee and a ranged attack. Melee attacks are, going to regenerate their AP, which is what you use to use your abilities, whereas a ranged attack is going to cost AP to use. But each character is going to play differently. For example, one of them is going to be utilizing different stances, so she can switch between a different stance, like a stance that does more damage but has lower defense, or a stance that has higher defense but less damage. There's one that can put different stains on the enemy, and then you can trigger those stains, and then that will cause additional effects. So you can like light somebody on fire, and then you can trigger that fire to do like a super attack, or attacks that will do extra damage when enemies are burning, that sort of thing. So each character is going to have their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to play a little bit differently. So it's not going to be just like everyone's basically the same. They also have a system what they call Pictos and Luminas. So Pictos are something that you can equip to your characters. Each character can equip 3 at a time. And these are going to give you a stat buff or various stat buffs. And they are also going to give you a special effect, which is what a Lumina is. It's a special effect on your character, such as, melee attacks might inflict fire, or, maybe do some extra damage, or that sort of thing. But when you do enough combat with a certain Picto equipped, then that Lumina becomes available for other characters as well. So, if you put a Picto on one character and then eventually maxes it out, then the other characters will have access to that status effect. They don't get the buff from the stats, but they do get those status effects. So that way you can kind of customize your party a little bit more and kind of build around, like, okay, do you want to build around fire? Or do you want to build around electricity? Or do you want to build around speed? Or do you want to make your whole team a little more defensive and be kind of more tanky? You can do all that. And so these Luminas are going to have different point costs. So, your characters are going to have a set number of points that they can use. The other games have used this, like I think Nier Automata with the chip sets. You can equip X amount of chip slots, and then each chip takes up a different number of slots, so something like that. So then you can pick which Luminas you want and swap them out and that sort of thing. So that's really cool. Every time you level, you're going to be getting 3 points to enhance your attributes and 1 skill point. So you're going to be unlocking your skills one by one, and you're going to be individually updating the stats. It's not just they get like a level up and everybody's stats increases. No, you're going to have to decide: do you want more health? Do you want more attack power? Do you want more defense? Do you want more crit? That sort of thing. So there's going to be a lot of character customization in this game when it comes to gameplay. So the game is roughly 30 hours long. It's going to be a relatively short main campaign. You know, a lot of games that have been coming out recently are closer to 60 or 100. So this is going to be a shorter game, but it does have a lot of side content. It says the side content is roughly about the same length as the game itself. So the game is about 30 hours. Side content is also about 30 hours. So you get about 60 hours of gameplay in there. And the levels are going to be fairly linear. I saw people comparing it to kind of Final Fantasy X, where they say, you know, it's not quite a corridor. It's not just a straight line that you walk along, but it is fairly linear. You're not exploring open fields or anything like that. But it does have branching paths. So, you know, you go down and you can go to the left, or you can go to the right, or you can continue on straight, and you find your way through the level. And they do want to encourage exploration, and as part of that, they said they're not going to have a mini map. So there's no mini map in these levels. So that way, you know, because you're exploring this new area, you guys have never been here before. All the previous expeditions have disappeared or never returned. So nobody knows what to expect out here, because whoever goes out and discovers it never comes back to tell anyone about it. So, you know, so they really want you to go out there and explore every nook and cranny and take this path and take that path and that sort of thing. So there's going to be no mini map. I did see one streamer where she was saying that it was kind of frustrating without a mini map because she wanted one, but that was a specific choice on their part to not put one in. However, there is a world map, an overworld map, and that of course has a map to it. So, you know, it's kind of like if you've played older RPGs, you know, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, you know, you get into a dungeon or something like that. It's a fairly linear corridor, and maybe there's a few branching paths where you can get some items or something like that, but you finish the level, or you finish the dungeon, you get back into the overworld, and now you can walk around the world map. There's this weird creature thing that you can fly you around, so he's kind of like acting like your airship in the older games. You know, so you can fly around the world map once you unlock him, or unlock that ability with him, or that sort of thing. So that's cool. And there are going to be difficulty settings, and it does say that when you change to story mode or hard mode, it is going to change the timing windows of your parries and your dodges. So obviously on story mode, those windows are going to be bigger, and on hard mode, those windows are going to be smaller. So you know, you can kind of tweak a little bit, you know, what is your window for a dodge or a window for a parry to make it easier or harder or that sort of thing. So really interesting. So the story, to recap, I think we talked about a little bit before, but you know, we haven't gotten too much more. There's actually quite a bit on each of the characters. You can go to their YouTube page, and they have a video for each character, kind of going into their background and why they're, you know, joining this expedition. But anyway, it's been 67 years since the world was destroyed. So the world basically fell apart, and the city of Lumiere fell into the sea. So it looks like it maybe broke away from the main continent, and now the city exists as an island separate from the main continent, and the main continent is where the Paintress is. And the Paintress first appeared at this moment when this happened, and she is a giant. She basically comes out of this gigantic monolith, and she'll paint a number on the monolith. I'm assuming she started at the number 100, because this is Expedition 33, and it's been 67 years. So, you know, she'll paint a number, and anybody at that age, it says anybody at that age or older will basically just turn into dust and die. But some of the characters look a bit older than 33 to me, so so there's some mystery there as to how it looks like some people are able to extend their lives past what the Paintress has painted. But anyway, the idea is she paints that number, everybody that age or older dies. So, you know, as time goes on, the population is getting younger and younger and younger and younger and younger. This is Expedition 33, which means that everybody has to be 32 or younger, because everyone 33 and older is dead. But as it goes down, you know, eventually you're going to get to the point where it's like, okay, if it's 20, you know, how capable are 19-year-olds going to be of, you know, executing this if they don't have older people with experience telling them how to build ships and how to get there and how to do this? You know, education is going to be a problem when you lose your older generation. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if that comes into play, you know, as Has knowledge been lost as older generations have been lost? You know, that sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But anyway, there have been multiple expeditions. You know, after a while, they figured out what was going on, and so they started sending multiple expeditions. None of them have returned. Nobody knows what happens to them. I think at least one of the characters, her parents were on a previous expedition, and they had thought it had succeeded, but then you know the paintress did show up again, and so then they realized no, they did not. So you know you're going to discover as you go along. You're going to find records of previous expeditions, what happened to them. I did, as I said, I was watching a stream, and one of the characters said one line that gives me an idea of what I think might have happened, and it was really just one line off, and I'm like, okay, now I already have theories, but I'm not going to go into that here. Um, but anyway, yeah, I've played enough games that I know that from you know, like one what looks like a throwaway line, you're like, that's not a throwaway line. This is big. So, but anyway, yeah. So the world in its current state is largely unexplored and unknown. There's a lot of mystical and or mythical creatures that people have heard about. Like, for example, when the character there's that weird thing that can fly. When they meet him, apparently it describes him as a mythical being that people didn't even know existed or not. You know, it's just kind of like, oh, people told stories about it, but nobody knew if it was true. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm really kind of disappointed Antoine's not here. I know he didn't really like the name, and he felt that it was kind of like they kind of turned him off. But I'd be really curious to see from Antoine if any of these characters or the creatures or any of that have some references to you know, maybe some French folklore or something like that. You know, I'd be really curious if these are entirely new creations or if they have a basis in stuff like that, because I know like I always enjoy seeing that sort of thing. Like for instance, I was playing Final Fantasy 14 and I came up against this snail creature, and I was looking it up because I was trying to hunt it down for a hunt or something like that, and turns out that this is actually a giant snail from French folklore, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I would be really curious to see if some of these creatures and that sort of thing come from, you know, that, or if these are entirely new creations. Really curious. So really looking forward to Clair Obscur Expedition 33, supposedly coming out on April 24th, so just in a few days. So looking forward to that.